My friends, today we begin the season of Advent. The word Advent means arrival or coming. It is derived from the Latin translation of the Greek word parousia, and it is normally used in the New Testament in connection with Jesus' second coming at the end of time. We heard from the prophet Isaiah during the first weeks of the liturgy of Advent, or we hear from the prophet Isaiah during the first weeks of Advent. The prophet Isaiah was active in Jerusalem from 740 BC until 701 BC. He lived through difficult times of war and conflict. And when Jerusalem was continually threatened by the Assyrian Empire, Isaiah's basic message returns again and again to three ideas. First, he condemns the sinfulness of the people of God. Second, he calls the people to repentance as they will face God's judgment. And third, he promises hope because the Lord's mercy is never exhausted for those who desire it. The book of Isaiah, often called the fifth gospel due to its many Christological prophecies, points to the coming of the Messiah in an age of fulfillment and restoration. However, when we read these prophecies during Advent, we can apply them to the second coming of the Lord and the attitude of watchfulness that marks our expectation of it. Thus, my friends, there are two Advents. The fathers of the church often linked the Lord's first coming in humility to Bethlehem with his second coming in glory at the end of time. This is why the readings for Advent begin with the second advent of Christ. At the first Advent, Christmas, the world did not notice the birth of Jesus in Bethlehem. The Lord was born in humility and weakness. At the second Advent, the parousia, the world will notice the Lord will come in glory and power. Today's gospel complements the readings from Isaiah and deals with the end of time. In fact, the passage taken from the Gospel of Matthew is taken from Jesus' fifth major discourse, which is called the eschatological or end times discourse. There's images of three events are interwoven in this discourse, and each event calls for vigilance. Jesus' apostles are called to vigilance in the garden before Jesus' death and resurrection, and this event inaugurates the final age of the world. The early church is called to vigilance before the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70 by the Romans. All Christians are called to be ready for their encounter with the Lord at their death and at the end of time. Jesus admonishes these disciples and us to stay awake and be prepared for the coming of the Son of Man. On the one hand, he tells them and us to be prepared like Noah, who followed the Lord's command and built the ark that saved himself and his family from the flood. On the other hand, Jesus tells them and us to be like the masters of the house, who is always prepared for a thief to break into the house. Being ready, then, means guarding our hearts from evil and heeding God's saving word. The popular carol, "I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day," contains within it a hint of two Christmases. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow wrote this carol on a Christmas day in which he was suffering greatly. Not all Christmases in life are joyful. Some can be unbelievably heavy. See, Longfellow's wife had just died in a fire, and his son was severely wounded in the Civil War. Amid these tragedies, he penned the words to his carol. While on earth, sorrow, loneliness, and strife can intermingle with Christmas cheer. Longfellow contrasts his personal sorrow with a joyful ringing of church bells of all Christendom. He includes in the hymn a sorrowing verse as follows: "And in despair I bowed my head, there is no peace on earth, I said." And yet, despair and sorrow did not have the last word. In fact, our earthly Christmases may have sorrow, but they point to the joy of the final Advent, the joy of the resurrection and life in heaven. And so, despite the sorrows and strife, the church bells will call us to life. Will call us to lift our heads, to look to the horizon. And after all, he finished the carol. I heard the bells in Christmas Day, their old familiar carols play, and wild and sweet the words repeat of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And thought how, as the day had come, the belfries of all Christendom had rolled along the unbroken song of peace and on earth, goodwill to men. The bells of Christmas have rolled along in unbroken song, and what we celebrate on earth will also be celebrated in heaven. There's something about this dark night experience that true Christians recognize and appreciate. While perhaps we don't like to have to wait on people or wait on things, Advent waiting does us much good. The more we long for the coming of Jesus, the more we love him and are prepared to receive him. Advent is a time of waiting, hoping, yearning, and longing for the birth of Christ. During the season of Advent, we watch and we wait. We are people surrounded by darkness who look heavenwards to see a great light. The longing we have is more than a yearning for Christmas morning. It is ultimately a yearning for what we can call the eternal Christmas. This is the eternal celebration in heaven where God is present forever to us and for us. Men and women who look forward to an eternal Christmas are seeking something more in life than just the ordinary. They want more. Christians are called to be a people who seek more, desire more, and hope for more. They are to be kindred spirits to those wise men from the East. The Magi were people who kept their eyes on the horizon. They were already looking for a sign. My friends, during this Advent preparation, we are also called to a spiritual journey toward Bethlehem. This journey is a time to prepare our souls, not just our homes. Prayer is a great way to wait for the Lord. And so this week, be sure to incorporate some prayerful moments into our schedules. And by doing so, become another wise man or wise woman on the way to find the Christ child.